This is the FM Gold channel of All India Radio. In the program Spotlight, now we bring you a discussion on government's decisions to appoint Chief of Defence Staff and its significance. The participants are Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni and Ajay Banerjee, journalist.
The Chief of Defence Staff will take over as the first Chief of Defence Staff of India tomorrow. He is a 4-star general above the 3 service chiefs of the Indian Army, the Navy and the Air Force. General Kulkarni, what does the CDS mean for the 3 services? How does the 3 verticals stand? Where will the CDS stand? Above them, below them? How does it work?
CDS is a 4-star general. He is first among equals. He is senior to the 3 chiefs, but he happens to be the principal advisor on matters of tri-service to the Raksha Mantri. He also happens to be the military advisor to the Prime Minister on the Nuclear Command Authority. He also is permanent chairman of the Chiefs of Staff Committee. Having said that, the CDS is a one-point contact for the government on all matters military because he also is the secretary of the Department of Military Affairs. The CDS is the person who is actually responsible to generate that trust between the bureaucracy and the services. That's one. And that trust has always been there. It's not that it was ever lacking, but he makes sure that he carries the 3 chiefs along in all matters. Number 2, he ensures integrity by total integration of the 3 services, which would automatically result in jointness. The integration part comes necessarily because unless you integrate, until you are part of it, the jointness will not follow. Having seen that, the synergy follows. And from the synergy comes the capability to be able to understand and enhance your combat capability by ensuring that whatever resources that you have are utilized for the best, any task that is given, that it should be able to be as a point of contact with. How does he do that? Now he ensures there are multiplicity of various things that each of these 3 verticals that you referred to are there. Now what do these 3 verticals do? You probably may be having the same destination but 3 roads. So he ensures that there is just one road or to reach the destination, infrastructure part, the logistics part, the training part, the communication part, the repair part, which have duplicities in all of it, ensure that they are utilized jointly, avoiding the wasteful expenditure.
General Kulkarni, you referred to an important aspect called the DMA, or the Department of Military Affairs. This DMA will be newly under the Ministry of Defence. Does it mean that finally the services have a head of a department?
I would say yes. Even though it is under the Military of Defence, the Department of Military Affairs, which is the secretary is the CDS, and because he is CDS, he has all the 3 chiefs not under him. The military command, the operational command of the 3 services remain with the respective chiefs. Neither are the 3 chiefs under him. That is also another thing to be understood. They are all 4 are 4-star generals, but he is first amongst the equals. Then what does he have? He has, besides the 3, all integration, for coordination, for understanding one another, to be able to convey their point of view to the government should they have any reservations on any issue. He is the man who actually interfaces between the government and, however, I will just elaborate that the 3 service chiefs are also free to give their advice to the Raksha Mantri. It isn't that only the principal advisor is the CDS. All the 3 chiefs are also welcome to go and give their advice.
General Kulkarni, the government order on December 24th, which mandated the task or the duties or the charter of the CDS, mentioned specific words that the CDS will ensure jointness and integration of operations, maintenance, logistics, training, transport, support services. For our listeners, what does this mean in lay terms?
What happens is, say, training. Now there are inter-service, tri-service institutions, there are training facilities, all. So commonality to be able to bring in training. Logistics. Now it's the same logistics today also to a large extent. There is the Army service would be able to give to the Navy and to the Air Force. Besides that, they may have their own communication. It remains the same. Each one of them have their own verticals for communication, or there is each one maintains its communication, but also there is a commonality to be able to jointly communicate. So you find in repairs, you have the same kind of vehicles all across everywhere. So you have the repair facilities which could well be utilized. Say procurement, you could well also be needing a rifle, which also is used by the Air Force, is also used by the Navy. Rather than 3 going in or asking for it, he knows exactly what the GSQR is. Make sure that the same weapon is accepted by all 3, and also it is common platform. All 3 need not purchase, whether it is any equipment. There will be commonality of many equipment. Navy does not necessarily only mean ships and submarines. Air Force does not necessarily mean aircrafts and helicopters. And neither does the Army also necessarily mean only rifles, tanks. So there are a lot of commonality in every respect. And it is this commonality and it is this CDS will ensure that the limited budget that is being made available at any point of time, because we do not have the luxury of the way we wish to have in the present context. So that limited budget, you get bang for the buck. You have a lean and mean forces, you get bang for the buck, and in the present environment, you are able to synergize, whether it is space, whether it is cyber, whether it is special forces, anything that you have to be able to deliver within the shortest possible time and to get to the target that you have without looking elsewhere. That is where the synergy comes in.
So going by the data of the budget, around 16% of the country's budget flows through the Ministry of Defence, the three forces and the Ministry of Defence. That is a huge amount of money, around 4.44 lakh crore rupees. It's a huge sum actually. General Kulkarni, when we talk of jointness, the order which the government gave on 24th of December also spoke about integration, joint stroke theatre commands. US and China have moved on to theatre commands. We, a small nation compared to China has 5 commands. We have 19 commands spread across 3 services. Do you think the CDS will be able to do that in the next few years?
There are 19 in the sense you have added Andaman Nicobar and the
Yes.
Strategic Forces Command, which 2 are a little separate from the 17 others by 7 plus 7 plus 3. What happens is the need is definitely to have a theatre command so that all the resources in that command, they can be well utilized. There are a certain time of reservations that a certain time you may be sea-based, certain time you might just be mountain-based, certain times it may be where the Air Force could be utilized in all front. Aim and the first priority probably for the CDS would be how to go in for this integration for a theatre command, because that is where the economy, this will come up. How do you utilize the limited resources within that theatre to be able to negotiate a particular problem? Should you not be able to do that, then you have 17 verticals, absolutely as cross-purpose. You could have a Northern Command for the Air Force also. Well, you could have a Western Command over here. You could have a Southern Command over there. And you might have a Southern Command for all the 3. So you find that this integration is a must. And I think this should be the priority for the CDS.
So the government order also lays down a timeline of 3 years for bringing all this jointness. You think it's possible in 3 years?
We must work towards that. If the government has given a mandate of 3 years, that means the government also see the urgency of having theatre command, where we not necessarily look only at US, which is a huge thing and has a different concept of the entire world to itself. China also might be following that a little differently to be able to keep pace with what the US has. We are not looking at that way. We are looking at ensuring that the sovereignty of India at no point is compromised. That's what we're looking at. And the resources available to ensure that the sovereignty at any point along the LOC or the LC is not compromised. That's it. We are not interested in anything. We are not looking at world the way US looks at it or the way China looks at it.
So almost 5 years ago in February 2015, the Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressing the Commanders Conference said that world over armies are cutting down. We are growing. Some words to those effect, I'm paraphrasing, not exact. Do you think that the time has come to right-size certain things which we have been doing since British times actually?
Always been wanting to, and the last attempt that we did was the Shekatkar Committee to right-size the forces, to improve the teeth-to-tail ratio, to make the forces lean and mean. And General Rawat, as when he was the Chief of the Army Staff, there was so much of thrust on ensuring that the forces are lean, mean, and that's how best we can cut down. We do and we must, there is no denying, but the terrain in our country actually necessitates us and forces us to have these kind of troops on ground. The new technologies coming in with the kind of drones available, UAVs available, much more better space, cyber intelligence available. Yes, the aim would be to reduce, not drastically. As I see, things can't be cut. What we really need is to improve teeth-to-tail ratio. If that also is phase 1, if we can improve upon and reduce the flab, reduce the wasteful expenditure, I think by a large extent, it is feasible.
So when we talk about CDS, the structure has been talked about since 20 years. The Kargil Review Committee headed by K. Subramaniam spoke about it. And there was talk of a 5-star general for 20 years almost. This thing has been meandering in the files of South Block. This moment when the CDS takes over in the third decade, rather 2020 he takes over, what do you think could be the immediate goal of the CDS with regards to, firstly, when it talks of operations, when the order says joint operations and joint logistics, transport and training, these are the 4 most important aspects of that. How do you think this can be done, these four aspects? Joint operations, for example.
Today there are joint operations doing it. The integrated headquarters for defense were already existing. For the last 20 years, they're very much existing. So the jointness and the purple community that we talk about has always been there, that it is not there. Only thing now, it has a head which will ensure that the trust is there. It will ensure that as a team they move along. They will ensure the synergy amongst all the three services, that there is jointness, just not jointness, but once they integrate, jointness will automatically follow. You can be in NDA and be able to do a joint training, but how much after that you're doing is very important. So the foundation has been there for years on. How do we integrate amongst each other? What do we do with each other? Fantastic. But now to be able to translate it, the integration will result in jointness automatically.
So there is a lot of talk that the CDS has been talked about and how jointness will come about. There is a lot of questions also. For example, powers of the Department of Military Affairs include that the CDS will prioritize all equipment of the three forces. The CDS will decide on the allocation of budgets. CDS will prioritize what item to be purchased. CDS will tell to the government or to the three services, will bring them on the same page so that there is no questions that the budget is less or more or whatever. Because at the moment we learn from the Ministry of Defence around 32% of the country's capital budget is spent on the Ministry of Defence. So the big bang for the buck, as often spoken about. Do you think the CDS will be able to prioritize without harming or without being questioned about the other services, about the prioritization of equipment?
See, the CDS will prioritize only taking the three chiefs along. He cannot prioritize entirely on his own. He wouldn't ever do it. He has to take the three chiefs on board. He has to ask each one of them. See, the naval chief might point of time might say, I want submarines tomorrow. The air chief will say, well, I want the fighter aircrafts tomorrow. The army chief might say, well, I would want to modernize my forces in this fashion. It is now for the CDS to see. He knows the situation. He is in touch. He knows exactly what and where and in how does he prioritize, how does he face, what options does he have in mind. And he would ensure that, yes, having taken all of them on board, plus he is a member of the Defence Acquisition Council. He is also a member of the planning. So as CDS, he knows where exactly it is and what is available where. Having a one-point contact and an influence virtually working in between the government, and he knows the three services, he knows the government, he knows the bureaucracy. In his own setup, there are civilians and there are military personnel. He should be able to do it. It is challenging, but yes, that is exactly what the charter is.
Sir, earlier when this prioritization was being done, it was being done through the Department of Defence, which is headed by a civilian bureaucrat. Now, do you think the services will be more comfortable with a military man heading the Department of Military Affairs?
Definitely. What happens is, when you have a Department of Military Affairs whose secretary is the CDS, he understands why he's saying and in which format he is saying. So his understanding is quite quick. And therefore, as your own man who now handling military matters, he cannot always say that probably the bureaucrat or the civilian hasn't understood. He won't be able to say that now. It is us. It is all men in uniform with whom there are civilians also who understand, and they will be able to prioritize and be able to convince him before he moves out. Even if it is a no for an answer, he knows why that no is there. So this understanding the CDS will have. The CDS will be able to give it also, and he will be able to convince all men in uniform in a manner that they really need to.
Forces move in hierarchies. The government has appointed a former chief as a CDS. The present CDS will be at least 5 to 6 batches senior to all the three chiefs. Do you think it's a wise step?
Definitely. You just referred that at some point of time in your talk that it is a 5-star or something. It is much better that you are a 4-star and you are first amongst equals rather than a 5-star. I have all along believed in the British system. We don't follow the American system. We follow the British system where Field Marshal is for life. You can't have a Field Marshal and you'll have tomorrow so many CDSs. If you were to have, say, a 5-star Field Marshal, you'd have so many of them for life. It is much better, and it's a nice order that the government has said that he would not be entitled to any government appointment hereinafter. He would not be able to take any private appointment for the next 5 years, and this would be his last, and he retires at the age of 65. Nothing more than this could be done. The government has given what services want, and the CDS in place is exactly what the government wants and what the three services want.
Thank you for speaking to us, General Kulkarni.
Thank you.
You were listening to a discussion on government's decisions to appoint Chief of Defence Staff and its significance. The participants were Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni and Ajay Banerjee, journalist. This program was produced and presented by the News Services Division of All India Radio. This program is also available on our website newsoneir.com. You can also follow us on the News on EIR app for updates. You may email your opinion about this program at airnsdtalks@gmail.com.